Care of Historic Monuments by Sach Killam, Metropolitan Memorial Parks. Sach Killam is a monument heritage specialist for Metropolitan Memorial Parks in New South Wales. Based at Rookwood for the past 16 years and building on 20 years prior cemetery experience in Canada, Sach and the Monumental Heritage team complete extensive in-house safety works as well as monument repairs, specialist heritage stone conservation and war memorial repairs for councils, heritage and friends groups, other New South Wales state organisations, RSLs and families, with specialty services including traditional lead lettering and lime-based stone conservation. A passionate advocate for cemetery safety and heritage preservation, Sach was a member of the Australian Standards Committee, which developed the standards for headstones and cemetery monuments, and has been a member of the National Trust New South Wales Cemeteries Committee since 2008, helping with the revised guidelines for cemetery conservation. Sach and his team are involved in extensive work at Sandgate Cemetery in Newcastle.
Welcome to everyone. And before we do start, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on traditional lands of the Awabakal people. We pay our respect to elders, past, present and emerging. Sach Killam, who is with Metropolitan Memorial Parks, he has been working today at Sandgate and we'll be doing that tomorrow as well. And I'm going to hand over now to Margaret, who's just returned from Canada recently, and she's going to introduce Sach.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for inviting me to introduce Sach. His official title, I believe, is Monument Heritage Specialist for Metropolitan Memorial Parks. And as some of you would realise, that's the organisation that administers 7 cemeteries in Sydney and our very own Sandgate Cemetery. And as you may have read in our August newsletter, Sach has a vast range of experience in the repairing of monuments and cemeteries, headstones, war memorials, public buildings, some of which we would know, like the Maitland Jewish Cemetery, Maitland Leave Cemetery, Les Darcy's Memorial and Hyde Park Barracks. But closer to home, as Mel said, he's currently working in Sandgate Cemetery along with a team of stone masons, I guess we call them, and repairing and restoring damaged and unsafe headstones in particular. I went out this morning to have a look because I knew they were working there, and it was absolutely fascinating to see the size of the monuments they're dealing with, and this tiny little crane lifting columns the height of the men who were working on them for them to be repaired and pinned properly back in place. And one young fellow who was working there showed me how the one that he was working on had just been sort of sitting there across this high with a base like that, was sitting there without any real fastening onto the base. So Sach's passion for this work is very obvious, and it's very gratifying for all of us who are fond of Sandgate to know that this kind of work is in hands like Sach's. And I remember you saying to me early on, Sach, you were really surprised at just how extensive the work was going to be there, and may have to replan the work, the timing of the work to get so much done. And I'm hoping that he'll be telling us more about that and the potential restorations, and showing us some of his work, and also some work done by others not so skilled as this group of people, and who have caused damage to some headstones in various places. So we all can learn a lot, I think, from the kind of information he's going to share with us. One of the things he's always concerned about is the safety elements, and he did tell us a story one day about how he has come to grief himself and has the scars to prove it around unsafe graves. So Sach, it's great to see you and to welcome you here in our own heritage building. And most of you who know me know of my strong connections to Nova Scotia, Canada, and Sach himself is a Nova Scotian as well. So I think we're all in good hands. So welcome, Sach. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nice to meet you all. I'm going to talk about the kind of work that our team does, the work that I do, and kind of talk about monuments, talk about materials. And I can talk forever about this. So I'm going to be gauging if you guys are nodding and look interested, because I can also get too technical and I can get too focused down. So I will be gauging your reaction and I can adjust the talk for that because I really can talk forever. It's a passion for me. Caring for historic monuments. I think this is not a bad start. This is us working at Warrenora, but this is just doing safety work. So that's Kyle, who's actually out at Sandgate right now. He's operating the unique tight access crane, and this is him doing the job at Warrenora. We'd like to also just always start with acknowledging country, and for our team, we had a great reconciliation event at Brookwood with some elders who were telling us, we have a great discussion, and then they said that from their perspective, when we were doing our job and taking care of the cemetery, when we were doing it well, and that was a key word that they used, when we're doing it well, that we're doing our part to take care of country, which was very gratifying. Talk today, this is the broad topics, monument types, the Metropolitan Memorial Parks stonemasons, what we are and where we work, and then our monument safety and conservation program, and the challenges we face. So Margaret's actually really given a good introduction already. This is just a chance for me to show off one of my favorite photos. This is high up on the scaffolding at Hyde Park Barracks and getting to repaint the really well done 1870 letters, that were fantastically carved, but really poorly placed so that you can't actually see them. If you're at Hyde Park Barracks, you have to go across the street, all the way across, because they put a string course just below it, the projected. And so it's almost impossible to see the lettering from where you should see it. So very interesting job. And we will get back to that one, I think. This is me as a young man starting our monument safety program in Canada. This is in Ontario in 1998. So I'd already been working at a cemetery for 14 years at that point, and I've been doing monument work for 5 years before we were at a point where I felt I had the skills to do it. I'd been trained by a master conservation stonemason, Per Newmeyer, who was Danish, who had retired and was doing cemeteries. So I have a very specialist skill set. I'm a cemetery worker, really, who is a monumental mason specialist, heritage conservationist, and lime specialist. But this is an example of a job that we'll come back to that we did for the Friends of Rookwood. So it's a conservation job where it's a monument from Devonshire Street Cemetery, which in Sydney is now central, and got moved to Rookwood, was then falling apart at Rookwood, and is a job that we were able to conserve. So we historically have worked well with the Friends of Rookwood as a stakeholder group. And as Metropolitan Memorial Parks evolves, I think there's very much that opportunity that Newcastle Family History Society works with MEP as a stakeholder, and that we can it empowers us to do works that we would maybe not do. Generally with the Friends of Rookwood, the work we do it at cost. So the Friends raise money, but then the work is done just at cost, and so or half and half. There's different models that are possible. This is a monument that really exemplifies our favorite type of work, which is an obelisk that was leaning really badly at Maze Hill Cemetery. And earlier this year, we worked for the Friends of Maze Hill we were able to non-invasively just dig that out and jack it back up, fill underneath, completely non-invasive, didn't have to dig down, into the grave or do peering. The monument, that's a technique that I was taught in the 1990s in Canada, where there's ground frost, and it's an amazingly effective technique to do. And lots of our work is that style of minimal intervention where you're doing basic maintenance and you're preventing a problem. The cost to do that job, we actually did 10 monuments in the cemetery. Well, we did 12 monuments in the cemetery. So it's very inexpensive when you're doing a group together. And this is an example of our best work, and you're not going to know what we did here. And that's many cases our most satisfying jobs. So the cross on the left was actually completely loose at both of these joints, and was essentially just about to fall. So that was, we call it a Class X monument. We've repaired it, but you would never know. And that's the curse and the beauty of our work is our best work is nobody notices it and nobody knows that we've done it. But we do keep copious documentation so that we can show that we have done it. So I'm going to talk now, talk about jobs that we've done, but also materials as we go. So sandstone, this is Sydney sandstone, so Sydney yellow block sandstone. It's Dr. William Bland, who was an early doctor in the colony, very famous for arriving just when people died. So he actually didn't save a lot of famous people, but he arrived just in time to not save them. I'm sure they were dying of causes, and it wasn't, it was hard to get around. So it often took the doctor a very long time. But he witnessed a lot of very famous deaths in the early colony of New South Wales. And this monument was leaning badly, so the Friends of Rookwood were concerned, and we repaired it for them. It's quite interesting because we actually ended up lifting pretty much the whole monument, taking it apart. None of it had been pinned, but it was built. I mean, we didn't go all the way down, but we ended up the footing were two big sandstone logs, and then there was a sandstone logs at 90 degrees, and then another two sets, and they seemed to go down. So we saw at least 3 sets of sandstone logs that were this big going down into the ground. So presumably the burial took place, and this was a reburial. Again, he was moved from Devonshire, and they must have put sandstone logs beside him, and then to protect him, but have this big monument on top, they built this kind of Jenga structure, and then one of them had collapsed. So we were able to, again, non-invasively repair that without, we weren't going to go down into the ground. It took a while, but that was fine. This is Solomon Wiseman. So example of marble. I should have said on sandstone. Well, we will actually look at some, but you have a wonderful sandstone here, Ravensfield sandstone from Talara, from beyond Maitland, as well as a Raymond Terrace sandstone that is not as good, that goes a green color, and so the one that stays brown, fantastic stone, world quality, level stone. The green one, not the same quality, and we've seen at Sandgate quite a lot of the green version that's not actually from Ravensfield, but probably Raymond Terrace, Waratah sandstone, not lasting as well. But marble, this is Solomon Wiseman. It's not his original gravestone, but it was an early gravestone that was put in for him after his first one, when he got moved from his farm onto the Wiseman's Ferry Cemetery. This had been damaged and then had been laid down into cement. Somebody thought it was too hard to repair, had laid it in cement into concrete. And so, yeah, our job was to get it out of the concrete and then to reinstall it upright. So this is about 15 years ago that we did that job, and it's looking great. So that's the hidden pin repair technique that we'll talk about a bit later. That's just an example of that. So it has pins inside. Material granite, you guys have quite a lot of it at Sandgate from an early date because of the wealth in this area. So really interesting to see. It was a great challenge for engineers. Essentially, since the Egyptians, nobody really did granite structures because it was too hard. And without a massive force of labor, very, very cheap labor, it was not doable. So in the 1820s, when everything in Egypt was, amazing, and Napoleon wanted, Egyptian stuff, and all of the world was interested in Egyptian. That interest sparked Scottish engineers with steam power developing a steam-powered bush hammer, which essentially replicates the Egyptian technique of working granite and making those huge sculptures. It was somebody with one piece of stone tapping it over and over again, taking tiny bits of stone off until they carved something. So an insane amount of labor. A steam-powered bush hammer has a whole bunch of those on a drum, just goes massively over, so you can do it much faster and much more easily, although probably very loud. Anyway, the reconstruction and learning the technique of using granite came back in the 1850s, 1860s through Scotland and slowly made its way. This one's at Brookwood, and it's someone his parent was from Aberdeen. But what's amazing about this is that the stone itself, this isn't that stone, but this is another one at Brookwood. If you look very closely, it actually has the maker's mark on it in the granite. So that would have been actually quite hard to carve. And many of them, the earliest ones that come from Scotland, do have maker's marks on them. Later, they're not, and they're most common in Presbyterian areas where people are proud to have come from Scotland. Less common in Catholic areas, interestingly, although you would think that there was a connection there. But the next slide shows one thing that you can also look for. So sometimes the local masons will have tried to efface the Scottish masons' names from the monuments. So if you look very closely, you can see it actually still has it, because the stone was so hard that the local mason, they got so far and then it was too hard. It was definitely too hard to get rid of the Scottish mason's name, even though they wanted to. Concrete, this is a monument actually at Kincumber that was leaning really badly, and that we repaired as a conservation repair. We corrected the lean, and then this is it after a few years. But some of these, this had bronze letters that had been shaped by hand and then put into the concrete when it was setting. So it's actually really interesting technology. They didn't have the name on it at all. So, and then interestingly enough, the records at Kincumber weren't exactly sure who the monument was for. But other than that gap, it's very interesting technologically, especially because the concrete wasn't reinforced, and so it hasn't actually now, the reinforcement isn't giving out. And so you'll see that with the Romans knew that it was a bad idea to put iron inside concrete or inside any structure, but masons seem to have forgotten that at some point. But at this point, the mason didn't know to put it in, which actually has meant that it's survived. So when we're recording monuments and doing our safety survey, we're also recording technological items of technological interest, rare designs, and things like that. So material don't see as much here as in some cemeteries. is slate, which takes an incredibly fine letter cutting and holds up really well if it doesn't delaminate. And there is a fantastic source in Australia. So Mintaro slate is from South Australia, and we can see it. There's two examples at Rookwood of Mintaro slate. Amazing stone that lasts, and you can see the sharp edge of, that's a very small carving, probably about this big, and the amount of detail and how well it's held up. So we don't work with slate very often, but yeah, amazing stone. And then limestone. This one is at Rookwood and is actually probably French limestone from Caen, which is it's actually from where William the Conqueror came from, or in French, Guillaume le Bâtard, the bastard, and that's his name in French. But the stone there is amazing because when it comes out of the ground, it's actually really soft, and you can cut it just with a saw. But then within about a month, it becomes hardened and lasts, hundreds of years. So there are examples, sometimes finials in cemeteries which are more finely carved will be actually in limestone, and there was a big factory there, and a lot of Catholic work, crosses were done there and imported into Australia for sure. Interestingly, just because I don't have a great photo of it, the photo that I would use now is actually at Sandgate, because you have some amazing limestone monuments, and really not sure where the limestone comes from. It looks a lot like the limestone from Norfolk Island, which would be fascinating if there was a trade. I mean, it would make sense that at some point it could come across as ballast. But yeah, that's a research question for someone in the future, is where is that limestone coming from? And there are some great monuments at Sandgate. I just don't have great photos yet because they face west. So yeah, at some point we'll have a good one. Iron, this is a particularly interesting one at St. Matthew's in Windsor, of an iron Etna monument, just because it has the paint ghosts. It still has the remnants of where it was painted, and you can just read the inscription still. Often the inscriptions is lost when it wasn't cast with inscription. So especially in regional cemeteries, you see many of these monuments, but very, very few of them with any paint intact. Bronze, this is one that I was working on last year. The War Memorial wasn't working on the bronze. The bronze is in fantastic shape, but the Laura War Memorial, and it's a great example of a large bronze plaque. What's amazing in this case is it exemplifies arts and crafts movement. So you can see the detailing. Normally, a bronze is cast. It's cast in lost sand, like a sand casting. That's the easy and sensible way to do it. It's efficient. It's, you can get good clean. But in this case, someone has done it by hand. They've done it mechanically with a router. The letters don't match exactly. They're stylish. And what's amazing is they very purposefully, it would have been very easy to erase those kind of background marks when they finished the job, but they've left it as a kind of texture. And also the arts and crafts movement, the idea was that you reveal the technology in the object, and so they've left that detail for us. Yeah, absolutely amazing, and the amount of work that would have had to be done. Sometimes this is at Moyne Farm, just the early settlement over the mountains from Sydney. So just past Hartley, and just an example of sometimes monument looks like one thing and it's another. So this is actually a local sandstone, a white sandstone, made to look like it's timber. Maybe not aesthetically wonderful, but very interesting monument. In terms of monument designs, we use the terminology that's from the National Trust Guidelines for Cemetery Conservation, and that's a really good. Interestingly, I was introduced to that in Canada before I ever came to Australia as a really good typology. So it's kind of an international. It's not the only international typology, but they use the term stele for this style of monument, which is the term that the Greeks and the Romans used for it. So it's not necessarily something that comes to us from our culture as the first thing that we think of. So stele, the stele, but it is what the Greeks talked about. And what's interesting is these are two of the earliest monuments in Australia. On the left is actually at Norfolk Island, and on the right is at the oldest intact cemetery on mainland Australia, St. John's, Parramatta. But both of these monuments and these monuments at the same cemetery. So this is Norfolk Island and again St. John's, Parramatta. They both are very much consistent with, and I don't have fantastic photos of here, but the Keramikos in Greece, which is just at the back of the Acropolis. So a 2,800-year-old cemetery. These monuments look very much like the common monuments at the Keramikos. Fortunately, most of the common monuments aren't on display, or they're in the back in stacks. So, but you can kind of get a sense of it. So it was a cemetery that was active from 3000 BC to kind of when the Romans came, Persians and then Romans were invading Athens, and many of the cemetery monuments got put into a wall in order to try and protect the city. But those have been excavated. And then this one's Maitland Jewish Cemetery, a very interesting. So a stele, often footstones and headstones match. In this case, it had a kind of a coffin barrel gravestone, body stone. Interestingly about that is it looks very much like a Scottish, very old Scottish and Irish tradition of a hogback stone. So it's kind of halfway between a hogback stone and a body stone in the shape of a coffin. And these were a Jewish family, but they were from Scotland. So whether that influenced how they, how do you end up with a Jewish monument in, Maitland with a very unique design? Yeah, really interesting. This is Maitland Glebe Cemetery. So just very a obelisk design. So this is culturally reminiscent of Egyptian designs. So the idea of an obelisk, and it was very popular. In this case, it's a Mason, so particularly interested in Masonic symbols. Desk monument. We see a lot of these, and you can kind of fix this one in your head because we'll come back to it with the challenges of monuments and techniques. Symbolism, this is just throwing in one of my favorite symbols from an altar tomb in Richmond, just amazing. So that's about this. It's crazily detailed, but also just crazy. This doesn't show up particularly well. I've tried for hours to get a great photo of this, but this is at Norfolk Island, so it's in limestone. It's in limestone, very much like limestone that you have at Sandgate. And then there's a ship, there's the waves, and just behind the ship's sails, difficult to see, are two massive sea serpents about to take down the ship. And then there's a kind of a Latin phrase there, and my partner, knows some Latin. She didn't make any sense to her. Tried online. She knew an old professor. He said it was nonsensical, but essentially said, bad fortune comes to people, something of that. Anyway, massively interesting in stone, and one day I'll get a good photograph of that. So this is back to the Henry Early monument at Maitland Glebe. So obelisk, so Egyptian symbol, but now it's got the Masonic symbols on it. It was carved by Charles Cobby, who was an early owner of the Ravensfield quarry beyond Maitland. So fantastic stone. He's highlighting what the stone can do. Obviously, it's damaged because it was been toppled and was in the ground for years. But yeah, amazing symbolism, Masonic symbolism. And then what's really interesting about that one, so that's in the background, is in front is what's clearly so this is the Masons, who are Protestants, strongly associated with Protestant movements. And the monument in front of it, this is Maitland Glebe, is glebe, so a religious parcel of land given to the Church of England. It's a Church of England cemetery, Church of England quarry behind it. This is, but in the very early colony, they're allowing what's clearly a Roman Catholic monument to be installed. So it's got two chalices, it's got IHS cross, and then, working with the Maitland Family History Group, when we were uncovering some monuments, they appeared Catholic, and then they were saying the same thing, that the records are looking that there are Catholic people buried at the cemetery. So it's really interesting how, those two things are written right into the landscape. And, that would never have happened in Sydney after a certain point. So it's quite interesting to see, juxtaposition of symbols of people that would not get along well in general. Just some more symbols. This is at Moyne Farm, again, working for the National Trust. And just, this monument with two cherubs, interestingly, but then it's kind of hard to see. There's a very happy looking sun here with a smiley face. And then, the cavalry cross, and then below that, skull and crossbones, but a very happy skull as well. So so this was one when we actually found it in the ground, face down, and revealing that, and then hand cleaning it, and just absolutely amazing to see what you're looking at. So that's kind of the materials and the monument style. What we do, the center point of what we do is monument safety survey, and safety is what allows us to work on the monuments. So this is one at Rookwood in the Catholic cemetery, and it was badly leaning. Someone decided that it would be a good idea to prop it up with a hardwood stake. That hardwood stake was then, after 10 years, was deteriorating. So yeah, essentially they've made, a bear trap, what we call in Canada. They've made a falling trap out of, and the next person who inadvertently, it was very weight, but just about to give out. So that was a very, very good repair to be doing. They're not always as obvious what we need to do. This is much more typical. but another monument that we've repaired. I guess what we should say is the other thing that we do is while we're surveying, when monuments lean, we record the lean. And then when we look at the monument 5 years ago, 5 years later, if it has changed, then we know that we need to take action. If it hasn't changed, then it's stable under the ground. It's not necessarily a huge priority. What we're doing, what we were doing today is lifting up monuments that were never pinned, and then drilling, putting new pins in. The pins that we do are to Australian standards. I was lucky enough to be on the Australian Standards Committee, where we put in, as of 2019, very robust standards for new monuments. Applies also for heritage monuments when it's possible without, it notwithstanding the heritage value. So heritage value still actually comes first, but if at all possible, you have to meet Australian standards. It's actually very possible. Australian standards are based on what I was taught in the 1990s by Danish stonemason, the British standard, and now they're actually significantly better. So the Australian standards are built on these kind of international practices. There was a British standard that was pretty good, and the Australian standard has gone one step beyond and is actually kind of, I think everybody else will be using our standard now in the next few years. So essentially for us, in this case, it would be 16 millimeter marine grade stainless steel dowels. Our up pins, they're allowed to be 20 mils, so 4 millimeters larger than the pin as a maximum. We generally do 2 mils up and 4 mils down, so 20 mil down, and then the pins extend at least 100 each way. What that means is that monument can never topple over by accident, and if you try to push it over, it won't, but you can still lift it if you had a crane off, if you lift it directly up. And so for heritage speaks, that's really important, that it's reversible, that, if the family had an interment there and, probably there's not a footing. So in order to save the monument and to have a burial, we'd have to take it apart. You can safely take it apart. It can be separated. It just can't topple over by accident. So if a child or a vandal is climbing on it or playing on it, it's not going to come over on them. However, we can still reverse that technique and save the monument. This is at St. Bartholomew Cemetery, so very early church in New South Wales, and a very poor attempt to stabilize that monument. Somebody had built a frame behind it, and then that frame had deteriorated, but they didn't want to get inside, so then they built a frame on top of the other frame, and then that was deteriorating, and then it was what was amazing was it was actually really not that hard to repair that monument, digging out the front and underneath the front a little bit, and then the monument actually was quite willing to go back to where it should go. So it wasn't a difficult repair. This is in Gundagai, so it's a carving by Frank Rasconi, who did the dog on the Tucker box. He also did the marble masterpiece, which is a amazingly intricate reconstruction of a cathedral in Europe, made all with New South Wales marble, tiny little pieces, thousands of pieces. He was clearly absolutely crazy, but he was a great proponent of New South Wales stone. He owned the Bourne Ore Quarries, so near Orange, which had fantastic sandstone. In this case, he's working in a local stone, and interestingly, this monument and the design is his father was a monumental mason, and his father most intricate works were of this style monument where it's a broken, a tree that's been cut down, a family history, suggestive of, a family cut short. So clearly he didn't do it to the same degree. Like his father's ones are amazingly flourished and crazily intricate, but he did it really well. And it was standing up really well, and until unfortunately someone decided to paint it with non-breathable paint. So it was deteriorating. So we removed what we could of the paint without doing any damage. The paint is coming off, so it's all right. The monument had someone had put granite tablets for World War II added to a World War I monument. The local RSL were, the names weren't all right and whatever. So they've designed a new granite monument for World War II, which is fantastic, which is now installed. So the World War I monument became back to being about World War I. And we were able to, so you can see just the lead lettering was coming out. So I redid the missing letters using traditional lead lettering. So one of the friends of Brookwood, when I first came to Australia, was a third generation letter cutter, Gordon Brown. And so he taught our team lead lettering, which was very much a kind of dying skill. And when he died, there was very few people doing it. But we had someone come through who took a real interest to it, and he's now TAFE teacher. He teaches at TAFE. We have multiple people on our team who do it. So, and he's now, in addition to his TAFE, he's got his own business. So he's doing lead lettering pretty much full time. So a fantastic turnaround from a part of the skill which was, almost dying. And it's, he's what's really good about him is I can do it and I can do it really well, but I do it slowly. He's become pretty good. He's maybe not quite as good as me, but he's 10 times faster than me. So this is Hyde Park Barracks, and this is now from across the street where you can actually read the sign. But just showing you like the before doing lime restoration mortar. So did a lime restoration mortar there, and then did new pointing of all of those joints, and we worked to what the architect spec. In this case, they wanted the joints to disappear. Sometimes they want the joints to be very clear, but they felt that it took away from the inscription. So, we can do that. It was an amazing project because we got to work with the clock person who was a master, clockmaker, and who was extremely stressed out because while we were there, he was having to reinstall the plate, the face of the clock, which was he had all regilded, but it was $20,000 worth of gold, which just seems amazing. But because it's World Heritage Site, it was authorized to do it, and it was great because we were on the scaffold, we were doing our bit on the day that he was installing it, and he was really stressed out because you couldn't touch the gold as it was going up. Well, you could have, but he didn't want to touch, so you had to bring it up the scaffold without. And he had a new apprentice. He had the apprentice for 2 years, but he clearly didn't really trust the apprentice. And having seen us and our work, we said we'd happily, do you need some help or whatever? And then he's like, yes. And then he didn't let his apprentice. And we got to take this. What was amazing? So it's copper at the back, and I didn't get a photo of it, but the back has just these crazy joints because it's actually from the front prows of some of the early ships in the harbor that got reused, beaten out, and made into this beautiful clock face but the back is all just welds and it's crappy bits of marine grade, copper plating that was just at the prow of a ship. So one of the early ones that I was showing you of a job that we did for the Friends of Rookwood. This is the work in progress of reinstalling it. So that's the piece that had fallen up. In this case, we just did it in a completely reversible fashion. So it's done with lime mortar. We've leveled that piece just underneath, under packing with good fill, which is washed river sand, 50-50 with 10 mil blue metal stone, underpacked in place. And then the altar top lifted back on. And that's, it's a Devonshire Street monument, and that's just hand cleaning it. So we almost never do anything other than just hand clean plastic bristle brushes and copious amounts of water. So get it all wet first, make sure that it stays wet the whole time that you do it, and then just plastic bristle brushes, and quite effective. Doesn't last forever. Sometimes architects will put wet and forget to reduce algae growth afterwards. In practice, the lime mortar that we do generally changes the alkalinity of the stone temporarily, and will also help it stay clean for a few years. But by just hand washing and not doing anything aggressive, you're handing it on for the next 5, 10, 20 years without doing damage. And that's always what we're trying to do. This is a altar monument at Wilberforce Cemetery. So the monument was sitting there on a collapsed vault. There's a second collapsed vault there. This is the Bushel Brown family. So they crowdsourced money to do the repair, and we were able to reconstruct it for them. So this is in progress. Sadly, what had happened is, so the monument was down in the 1970s and 80s. At some point, someone had stolen the 6 pillars, the columns of the monument, probably for something they were doing in their house, stolen from the cemetery. So we were able to demonstrate, and we in fact did a state heritage register heritage exemption process for this one, documenting what the pillars looked like exactly, and then we reconstructed the monument with the new pillars. We actually ended up having, because the top was fractured, of having to set a new sandstone piece inside. So again, it's non-invasive in the sense that we did do a concrete pad, but we separated. So there was a vault underneath that had collapsed in and had filled with ground, had filled in, and parts of the vault had collapsed in. So we essentially poured a new concrete pad on top of that, but separated from it. So again, we didn't have to go down. We didn't have to reveal any archaeology or do anything invasive. It can still get lifted up as a unit. I mean, it'd be an awfully lot of weight, but it is possible because there's a separation barrier. And then we reconstructed on top of that, along with a lot of inset pieces for missing parts of the stone. But this is the monument. This is a few years later. It's blended in even better now, so you don't really notice it. The family only had enough money to do this. This one had more missing pieces, so it was decided to leave it down, but in a nice way that you could still recognize that it was an altar monument in the past and that you could read the inscriptions. So I think it was a very good solution. This is at Mount Victoria, so a marble monument. Marble monument had been previously fractured. A local volunteer had just glued the pieces together in heavy winds, came down again because it had just been glued. It didn't have any pins or anything. So that on the right is having done the hidden pin repairs and actually done a few lead letters across the joints where it was missing. So and that's looking great. So that was a important pioneer going of the crossing of the mountains. This was, once in a lifetime opportunity to work Fraser Mausoleum at Rookwood, which Friends of Rookwood had asked me to work on 15 years previously, but we couldn't do because the windows. So this is altar alabaster sarcophagi, 3 alabaster sarcophagi, massive English alabaster in pieces that you can't possibly get now. Unique construction resembling something that would be in Westminster Abbey or some of the grand Italian cemeteries. So, but alabaster is soft stone. It's essentially, these were constructed with plaster of Paris. So just plaster of Paris used to put the pieces together. So the one vulnerability they have is water. Vandals had broken all the windows, so water was getting in. Birds. I mean, the whole building was a complete mess. So when I started, they had recently cleaned it out, but the bird droppings and accumulated stuff inside this was almost to chest high, supposedly. So, and certainly when we got involved, the Friends wanted us to reconstruct the sarcophagi. But to do that, we actually had to have a scoping project, which took a week to take all the pieces out and to find out if we had all the pieces and could reconstruct it. And it turned out that they were. Unfortunately, the stonemasons who had been, so there had been vandalism at Rookwood, very bad vandalism, and the one member of the family had contacted the cemetery and asked that the family members who were interred in these sarcophagi be removed and cremated so that they couldn't get vandalized. So the Independent Cemetery Trust had hired a mason to do it. Unfortunately, the mason didn't have the correct equipment and didn't really think about the fact that these were brought from England. They were brought from England without the people. So the people died and got put in. They were constructed. They were very specifically designed, beautifully designed to be taken apart without any invasive things. That each part comes apart. You take one piece off, and then you can see the joints to the next one, and you just chisel that off. It's plaster Paris. It's quite soft. You take out the bronze cramps, and then you lift off the next piece. It's just, they're made to go up and to be, because when you had the second burial or the first burial for some of these, you had to take them up and you didn't want to have to break them. Anyway, the mason didn't realize that, and they ended up breaking all of them, all 3. Really near the end, they must have realized, because the last one, they did a lot less damage because they kind of realized at that point, like, oh, wait, we could just lift this, we didn't need to, so, but yeah, it was horrendous what had been done, but once in a lifetime opportunity. So you can't necessarily see it, but there's a great fracture joint through there. Many of that's probably about 15 pieces of broken stone reconstructed together. So but new stained glass windows that precisely match the historic ones, except this time with a brass grill so that teenagers are throwing rocks through it. So yeah, amazing opportunity to do that. We don't get that many opportunities to do this, but this is just showing off. We do get to do stone carving once in a while, and this is my entry in the last New South Wales stonemasonry carving competition. And then this is, and just kind of some works in progress from the previous one, which we then were able to reuse for the 100th anniversary of the Rookwood Crematorium. And on the right is actually a time capsule. So that pillar has a hollow section, and there's a bronze time capsule put in, and in 100 years it's supposed to can be lifted off. It's got our Australian standard pins in it. So there's a hidden joint right here, can get cut out, lifted off, and the time capsule revealed. But that's that's getting to carve it. In this case, the carving that finial, it took longer for me to do the drawings than to do the carving. So it took about 40 hours of drawing and probably 30 hours. So it took me a very long time to work out how to do it in a stonemasonry way. This is doing repairs on Bar Island in the Hawkesbury, which was amazing opportunity for Hawkesbury Council, and a tiny little cemetery. Again, you can only get there by boat or by barge, and it was a real learning experience for us, because it was architect spec, and one of the monuments couldn't be repaired, so it was getting put onto a matching marble piece, but on the ground, and so we had the marble slab steely that historically, clearly the masons brought on to the island and installed big pieces, but we had to do it ourselves, and it was. We had 6 guys, and we had a very hard time matching what they did historically, and probably didn't complain about it. We certainly complained, but it was a wonderful trip to get there each time. This is Lake Cargellico, and 2 years ago was a really interesting job to do, just because the monument had been repaired previously and kept up by a local farmer who had, well-meaning and had done it. But when we got there, so they had put in for a grant to regild it, and the Office of Veterans Affairs had said, well, you should have a heritage person inspect it, or heritage masons do it, and wouldn't give them the grant unless they had someone heritage come out to do stuff. So they ended up hiring us to come out and do it. But what we discovered when we were there was evening, the wind started up, and the monument had some very odd wear to it. So it's Barrel trachyte, so trachyte from Barrel, fantastic stone, amazing New South Wales stone. But had really strange wear marks, and Andrew and I were trying to work out, like, how do you get this kind of very open joint and then these rounded marks in the structure like this, because we were paid to repoint it. We were repointing it and then gilding it, and as we were doing it, the wind came up and the whole monument moved in front of us in the wind, and it was shaking in the wind, and it had clearly, like, it's such a strong stone. It had been doing this for years and years and years, and nobody had noticed. So it was really good that it was getting properly repointed. Ultimately, we've recommended that it actually has to get taken apart and pinned at some point, but the mortar that we've done should act as a telltale, as if those problems are reoccurring. So that was a great job. This one is Brawarna, an honor roll. It had been in the school. It was the school's honor roll, and then the school got demolished and some big demountables put in instead. And then one thing led to another, and it got installed in concrete, essentially in what was a splash pad with irrigation. So it was getting water on it every day, sprayed with water, and then dried out, which is really bad idea for stone. It was deteriorating very rapidly. You could see all the paint and the inscription was gone. There was some black paint left. This is it was an amazing opportunity. It was difficult to get off. We were very happy to have it off. We generally don't like to take things off site, but in this case, it's a very long way to go, and I couldn't stay up there for weeks doing the repainting of the lettering. So in this case, we knew that we couldn't do this monument. So war graves at the time, the maximum you could get for a grant was $10,000. There's no way that we could do all of this lettering for that amount. So I volunteered my time to do the painting, and I actually had a friend who's a metalsmith and an artist who is also a woodworker, and he volunteered to do the frame, because it was going on a new frame that had to be very heritage friendly, so that it was very secure, but can also come apart and can be separated off. So it's got secret top entry to take it apart. But yeah, you can see how amazingly fine the letters were. They're amazingly well done letters. And then getting to reinstall. So what was amazing was talking to the heritage advisor, who was very, very happy about the outcome. She had worked out that just by chance, the place that the school wanted, that was undercover but still outdoors and enough that they could have assembly in front of it on Anzac Day and Remembrance Day, was actually exactly on the classroom that it originally was inside. So it is very close to its original location. It's now outside, but it's completely undercover. It's not getting wet every day. And they just just did a newspaper story. A local historian did a story on the reconstruction. So we did it about 3 years ago, but it's just because it's on a school property, it's not actually accessible for anybody except the school kids and the teachers. So a heritage person had to actually step up to write that story, to do the podcast. Kind of amazing. So documents that we work from, key document, the National Trust Guidelines for Cemetery Conservation. So I'm on the National Trust Cemeteries Committee, and we're actually just about to do some revisions on that. So if you ever use that document and you find somewhere hard, this is a very good time to give some feedback to the National Trust, or we would like this or that in that document. The Australian standards, British standards, and then the person that taught me conservation, not the stonemasonry side, was Per Newmeyer. He worked closely with this woman, Tamara Anson Cartwright, who wrote Landscapes of Memories, and that's really the handbook in Ontario, where Woodlawn Cemetery was. So still use many of the techniques from that and brought those over from Canada. So our program for Metropolitan Memorial Parks, we've had 8 name changes since I've been working for the company. So I'm actually not the greatest at remembering what we're called at the moment. It's a government issued name, so it's I think we will have it for a while finally, but it is a stretch. So our safety and conservation program is essentially, and I do have good news actually for Sandgate on this. So each of our sites we go to once a quarter. We were coming to Sandgate because we do multiple days at Sandgate. The idea was that we would come twice a year to Sandgate. But because of the scale of the issues here, the scale of the monuments, the earthquake damage, the number of monuments that have been moved slightly, become unstable, but are still upright, so are in a dangerous position, we've now been approved to come up for multiple days on Portland. So that's great, and that fits us in better with the whole Metropolitan Memorial Parks. And so yeah, we've already started to make some progress on the unsafe historic monuments. Yeah, the program involves a survey. So every year we look at 1/5 of the cemetery. We've got a rota, so the cemetery is divided into 5 broadly equivalent sections, and we survey one each year, such that after 5 years we've done the whole cemetery. So we're essentially looking at every monument every 5 years. In addition to that safety survey, where we also record some conservation stuff when it's obvious to us, but we don't record the history, which is your guys' job. Sometimes we'll overlap, but we're much focused on the monument design, rarity of design, and materials. Those are what we can see and that we can record really well. If we come across, we call them a Class X monument, a monument that's above head height that can get pushed over generally with a pinky finger. So it's 25 newtons. This is a recent monument that we had to lay down because actually had not been pinned to Australian standards at all. It was since the 2019 standards, but the mason hadn't seen fit to follow the standards in terms of the pin. So it had a 20 mil pin in its 30 mil hole, only 75 mils down when it should be 100. Essentially, that meant the cross was just sitting there loose. They hadn't installed it with anything. The cross and the tablet were just sitting there. The pins had nothing in them. It was completely not just to Australian standards. So it's laid down. Mason came and fixed it. In this case, the mason didn't fix it properly, so we ended up laying it down again 1 month later. After engineers also had a look at it, that mason then got in seriously more trouble. The monument got reinstalled, and then last time I was up, found that it's already now moving a little bit more. So we may be doing it a 3rd time, which is not great for the family. This time it is held by the pin though, so it's not we don't have to lay it down. We can get it prepared without having to lay it down. It's very rare that we lay things down. That being said, last time I was up here, we laid down 4 monuments. The time before, we laid down 7 monuments. The time before that, we laid down 4 monuments. So we almost never lay down monuments, but we have laid a lot down in the last, since December. However, I think we're making some progress. I had a fight with some monumental masons today. They got sent back to their factory with the monument. So I think that they're just about to learn the lesson. It's not my place to actually discuss stuff with masons. That's done by our permits team. And in the past, we've had problems because the permits team has been based in Sydney and then not up here. So we now have a person who's up here, and she worked at Wickwood previously. She's got lots of experience, and so hopefully, and we've got new processes in terms of getting masons to record pins. So hopefully that's all getting turned around, and it's an unhappy story, but it's actually turning around as of today. Hopefully. This is Class X monument at Sandgate that we repaired this year. So cross was just about to come down. The next heavy August that landed on that was probably bringing it down. So we lifted it up. It's now installed with Australian standard pin, but just in line mortar, and so it can get lifted back up. The lime mortar that we use actually is quite interesting because it's St. Astier natural hydraulic lime. It's what the word cement that we use now until the 1850s, referred to natural hydraulic lime, was what was called cement for 2,000 years. So the Romans called it cement. It was called cement until something was invented called artificial Portland cement, OPC, became really good in the 1870s, and we started to talk about cement being great Portland cement and the cement that is now available. The cement that we have now is even stronger than it was in the 1870s. It's gotten stronger and stronger. It's not as good in terms of often they use fly ash slag in the cement that means that it has more soluble salt, so it's not actually a great product to use anymore, except for granted it's fine. But going back to what I was supposed to be talking about, natural hydraulic lime, St. Astier natural hydraulic lime that we use, it's from St. Astier in France, which is a Roman quarry. So it's been quarried, the bags in Canada, and the bags come since 54 BC. So interestingly, the bags don't say that in Australia. So I'm not sure, like, because they didn't operate for that whole period of time. In Canada, they're still allowed to say it, but here, I guess they're not allowed to say it since, because they had a gap of, a few thousand years. Although I think it was built, it was used in France a lot, so the gaps were short. This is the Class X monument at Eastern Suburbs Memorial Park in Sydney. So in Botany, La Perouse, and just an example, it had been dodgily repaired by an uncle, and he was a tiler, and you can see the monument as we were taking it apart. It had been propped up with bits of tiles. Some of the bits of tiles were on softwood cornice pieces, and it was unbelievable. So it was actually really good. It was the local cemetery staff who pointed out that there was some movement with the monument. We had recorded the monument when we did the safety survey 4 years earlier, saying that it had been recently reconstructed, but it looked so dodgy, and the joints were pretty, like, they'd been cemented over, but they looked so questionable that I actually took photos of the monument, and we put it as a Class D, which is, so we have Class X, which we have to deal with that day, and then we have our high priorities, which are A, B, and C. D is, so something wasn't quite a high priority, but I was worried about it. And then 4 years later, the staff saw that it had started to move. And once we started to take it apart, they had just glued some marble over top of the collapsing structure, hoping that the glue was going to hold the whole thing apart. So anyway, the family have had it reconstructed now properly by a monumental mason. The family were actually quite upset when they came and the monument had gone. They came and they thought the monument had been taken away by the cemetery. We had actually just put it safely in a nook, 3 kind of graves down where we can make sure it wasn't going to get hit by a lawnmower. So when they found out that we had actually saved the monument, and then when they saw what their uncle had done, they knew it was not the right thing to do. So the outcome has been very good. So in that case, I guess I should just say, when you install a new monument and when you renovate monuments, there's a permit fee. The permit fee is quite a lot of money, but when a job is for the safety of the monument, you can apply and MMP waives that fee. So there are times when, so the family, that would be our contribution to helping, we don't charge for having made it safe, and then the family doesn't have to pay a new permit fee for doing the safe repair. That's not guaranteed, but that's something that can be applied. And when we're doing repairs, so this is in Field of Mars, and this is actually 2, relatively new employees doing one of their first RO2, we call it, jobs. So pinning to Australian standards. We don't charge for those jobs. So if a family comes forward and says, "Oh, we think something's been done to our monument," it's all recorded. We'll tell them what's been done. It's reversible, so if they want it undone, we can take it apart and lay it down. We can't reinstall it, obviously, without the pins because it's unsafe. But it's completely reversible. I mean, we have drilled a hole into it. Other than that, the job's reversible, and the families aren't charged for that because it's doing our due diligence as parks managers. So that's the kind of compromise. This is, so I've talked about our high safety priorities. The highest of that is a class A. And this is just an example. So that's the pin that the monument had. You can see that's my thumb with the pin. So yeah, pretty much. You can see how big. And so on the left there is the new Australian standard pins are on the right, and the old pin is on the left. So yes. Our goal with the program, and we're very proud of it, is that, you know, we have actual safety outcomes. We're not just surveying and reporting problems, we're actually dealing with the problems. So this is at Macquarie Park, and we've got a kind of outreach. So the office staff can come out with us for a day and work with us and actually do work. So on her second day on the right there, Jess actually did some drilling, and Jess and Nathalie actually did one monument all on their own, not this monument, but did a monument on their own of a child statue. So that was fantastic. But the outcome being that we actually do the repairs. Challenges, we continually learning that monumental masons are not doing the right thing. So these are two monuments that actually our staff, our burial staff, have inadvertently hit and pushed over, but hit very gently. On the right was nudged with an excavator going past it, so just touched right at the bottom. This one was a burial truck that hit it, but the truck hit it somewhere along here and didn't even touch it, like didn't even chip it. So the people that the burial operators, you know, claimed, and the evidence seems to be they really didn't hit it very hard. But what they did reveal was that the mason hadn't put any pins in at all in the base or in the headstone, or in this case, it did have pins, but the pins were essentially made with coat hanger pieces. So they were 3 mil brass, and they were what's called. So they weren't going to hold anything ever. So we are unfortunately discovering that. We're also discovering that when we have drivers drive into monuments, and it turns out that they weren't done. That should all be settled under our new permits process. But yeah, this is just a horrendous job at Sandgate. In December, came across this monument. There were no pins at all. We were just, there was an actual X on the grave here. It was actually a burial going to happen later in the week. Just happened that the monument safety program was going past the week before that burial. And yeah, the mason had neglected to put any pins at all. They had also neglected to rough up the surface. And then they had used, and I keep this with me, so they had used the crate strapping that the monument came with as a spacer. So you're not supposed to have spacers, let alone slippery ad hoc spacers like that. And so it was just sitting there. And if a family member had come and leaned on that at the time of the service, they would have fallen into the grave. So we were very, very happy to have caught it. But it was a heart-dropping moment for me that a mason would, you know, particularly after the Tari War Memorial, like up here of all masons to be doing it, to not pin something at all was horrific. This is the other side, is a job that was really disappointing. We had worked for, I used to work in those 8. The very first of those 8 was the Rookwood Anglican and General Trust. And we had our own company there, Monuments and Memorial. And so we actually worked for the other trusts at Rookwood. And we had done a monument for the Independent Cemetery Trust, where the monument was a huge marble stele that had come over in a windstorm. And it had clearly just been sitting there. We didn't have the safety program at the time. We had installed it. We did a really good job. We reconstructed the basalt at the bottom, so it had basalt from Melbourne. And yeah, we were very proud of the job, our team. And then, a few months later, we're at the Independent Cemetery Trust, and the office is just right here, and saw that a monument had been repaired, not by us, but by another company. Was talking to the manager, was very disappointed that this other company had got the work, like, why didn't you get it? Oh, you cost twice as much. And then we all got amalgamated and everything happened. And then in a windstorm 4 years ago, that monument fell over, and the local grounds guy, so we have a guy who takes care of this specific area, Louis, retired, semi-retired, and now just keeps this area smick. He repairs machinery that breaks down. So he said he didn't hit it. I completely, believe him. There's no reason. There's no machinery that would be there. He said it came down after a very windy weekend, and we looked, and they had put 2 daubs of mango epoxy just here, and then they had put some across the bottom where the tongue should be, but it wasn't even enough to touch the tongue. They hadn't put no pins at all. They had done nothing. So they cost half as much as us, but they did maybe 5 minutes worth of work. So it was horrendous to see that that's what had happened, but it was also, you can see the tongue there, and then never touched. And what's terrible about this is, if they had just put cement in there, that would not be ideal, but it would have worked, and it would have cost them almost nothing, and it would have still be up to this day. We would do natural hydraulic lime as well as pins, because we want it there for 1,000 years. But they could have done the job easily and quickly and cheaply, if they just made half of it. So yeah, that was very disappointing to see. This is, so the desk style, when I said, this is a desk style monument, this is the top of the desk has been removed. It's kind of a terrible story, because this family, the family member was very concerned that he was the last of the family. He wanted his headstone taken care of well at the time. And so he had actually prearranged with a very reputable monumental masonry company, which had been operational at Rookwood since the beginning of Rookwood, for them to repair the top and do a new lead lettering inscription for him, and repair the lead lettering on the other inscriptions. And then, so this is my co-worker, Matthew Johnson, who when he started with me 2007. He was a kitchen mason. He had only ever installed kitchen stuff. He didn't understand heritage at all. He would harass me all the time. But he's come to love heritage. He ended up doing, from having not finished school, he ended up doing a Master's of Heritage Conservation. But anyway, he discovered this work in progress where they had started to do lead letter and had discovered it. And they'd lost the people who did it. They thought it was easy. They didn't know how to do it. Then they had messed it up, and then they had ground back the surface, and then they put plastic on, which doesn't last very long. Like, they just absolutely butchered this. And the terrible thing is just that this was a family member who really cared and who had really thought they had done the right thing. So that masonry company ended up, having to halt work on this, as well as all other work at Rookwood, until they actually got someone else in who could do the lead lettering. So it ended up being all right, but it was horrendous along the way. This is in Parks, just a absolutely horrendous recent job done by a Wagga company, where they have obviously been paid to clean and repaint a historic monument. The easy thing to do, what masons are used to on granite, is just spray paint over the letters and then with a razor blade take it off. You can't do that with sandstone. So some masons will spray paint it and then with a carved stone carve it back, and it looks really bad. This is taking it to another extreme. Like, this is so bad that you've actually taken off all the historic stone and the weak stone beneath it. You can see that they've then tried to reconstruct the letters, but you can see the eights don't match at all. They've absolutely butchered this monument. The whole monument leans back still. Like, even this is one of the worst renovations. I was there taking photos, and then interestingly enough, just by chance, a family member came and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was, I didn't know what to say. I'm taking some photos. I'm with the National Trust. They said, "Well, what do you think about this work?" I said, "Well, honestly, this is the worst job I've ever seen." And then he said, "That's what I thought. My sister got this company to do it, and we're trying to sue them." I said, "Well, talk to the National Trust, because you can get some background that this is completely unacceptable for heritage fabric." So when you recarve stone, so in this case they've ground it back really deeply. You take off the hardened outer surface, and so the National Trust guidelines, and particularly when we revise them, will make it very clear that recarving of a historic inscription is not best practice. Best practice is figure out what was there, reconstruct it, and put in a plaque that's separate from the historic material. And you can add other details too, but the best is if you replicate what was the historic thing and then add whatever details you want in a plaque. It's on its own sloper. It's separate from the historic material. Doesn't interrupt the view of it, but is clear, and it can be permanent. You've made a permanent record of that. So that's a fantastic way of doing it. When you recarve a stone, particularly sandstone, you get through the case hardened outer surface, and you can see this actually at Raymond Terrace Pioneer Hill Cemetery. Someone in I think in 1988 probably, recarved the years on the oldest gravestones. And if you go to that cemetery, you'll see really poor carving of the years of most of the oldest stones, completely uncharacteristic of the rest of the carving, which would be perfect and high skilled, or rustic and interesting, but not, and they tend to weather a lot. And I should have actually took a photo. We've got a good one at Rookwood where you can actually see the face delaminated because someone has carved through it. So not only do you lose the historic carving, but you'll have accelerated weathering. And in practice, there are no letter cutters right now operating in New South Wales who are of the quality that historic letter cutters were. Historic letter cutters did it all the time. That was their trade. I can do some, again, very slowly, but to do the same quality, no one is going to get to that quality. And so, it's not a great, it's just a bad outcome. This is doing hand cleaning at Maitland Jewish Cemetery, just kind of before and after, then doing lead lettering. So this is a repair in progress of the Hawkesbury River Disaster Monument in Rookwood Jewish. But one thing that you've got to learn if you're going to do lead lettering in Hebrew is you got to learn the Hebrew letter forms. So I don't know what they mean, but I know what the letters look like, and that took a lot of training. Just looking at it, drawing them out, because you have to be able to imagine what the letter is. So Gordon Brown, when he was taught his first 3 years, his grandfather would do the outline of the letter when we were doing letter painting, and then he would fill it in. And he was supposed to spend those 3 years learning what the letters really looked like. So his thing was always that you had to learn the letters. And certainly for lead lettering, that's the key, is you have to be able to see the letter when you've got lead all over the top of it. This is, a really good example, I think, of best practice for, this is at St. John's Cemetery in Parramatta, and so with the Friends of St. John's. So they have a very strict program making sure, because it's such a historic cemetery and there's so much interest in it, there's been some really cool work over the years, and they try very hard to ensure that good work is done. So this is a new sandstone sloper with inscription. The inscription matches the historic inscription, and it is really hard to see on the right. It's really hard to see in real life. So it was John Thorne, who was one of the first police constables, and he had an inscription on this. At a later date, the family had that inscription filled in with, we call it Mason's putty, so linseed oil and chalk and lime, and it was filled in, and a new inscription was carved for him that was much shorter and didn't have all the details about what he did as a constable, and that he was the first police constable. And then 2 other family members were added to. So that's a palimpsest. There's actually 2 inscriptions over, and when you're there, it's really hard to read it. But Judith Dunn, the local cemetery person, who's amazing, and Andrew and I, she had already done a reconstruction, but she had a few gaps that she couldn't work out the letters for. So we spent a couple of hours, which was just amazing, trying to work out just the last bits of the missing. And eventually we got it to her satisfaction that yes, absolutely, this was it. So the police paid for the new plaque to go in. The Friends of St. John's made sure that it was done to, the best practice. So that's hard to top that job. This is also at St. John's, just of and George MacDonald, who actually fought in the Napoleonic Wars, and then died in Sydney, I think 1826. His altar tomb monument. So it was actually, the bricks, all the mortar was going, and it had a lime mortar. So this was a very hardcore spec job by the head of the technical advisory group of New South Wales Heritage, of reconstructing the lime work without altering any of so all the historic fabric was saved, and instead all that we did was we placed some new bricks where bricks were completely missing, and then rendered up to that with natural hydraulic lime render. Well, in this case, a lime putty mortar render, even softer, and then rendered that, and then lime washed the whole monument. So it's a really good project, just in that. So the philosophy is that and we try to work this way all the way, is to conserve everything that we can. We don't get rid of any fabric, and we don't alter the design or alter the fabric. So everything that we're doing is compatible with the old stuff, but can be told that it's not identical to the old. So on close inspection, you can see it's different. This is also at St. John's Parramatta, just The cockatoo is just about to push this last bit off. So interestingly, because this is so it was clearly repaired previously, probably in a centennial project, but iron pin was used. It's actually galvanized iron, but it started to separate out as well. So that's now put in. This one was hardcore conservation, so we generally use marine grade stainless steel, but sometimes for heritage jobs, we'll use rigid fiberglass reinforcement pod because that's even more easily cut out if you ever needed to reconstruct or separate pieces apart. And then, yeah, this is a rare example of actually getting to hand layout and cut letters. So Friends of Rookwood often, they encourage us to keep old skills alive, and so they'll often, a job like this, we'll donate some of our time to do, because we're slow, and so we'll do it at cost with a bit of donation. But so this is laying out lettering by hand. So that's pretty much a skill that very few people do anymore, but it's a Roman skill. It's called quadrilaterale. So you actually, it's just like 4 lines, you separate it into 4 bits. You've got an inscription, and it helps you space everything. And then, so that's laid out by hand, cut by hand, and then lead letter. And so we do get to do that once in a while. But this is a job we did for Friends of Maze Hill. This is the stuff that actually, is the most satisfying. But again, you don't notice. So Badley Monument, getting right near to its toppling point, we've repaired it. We brought it upright, non-invasively. It will be like that for many, many years, hopefully hundreds of years. And nobody's going to know that we were there, but us and the friends. And this is just an example of keeping our eyes open. This is working at Rookwood, just amazing what you do see sometimes, and just this little guy. And part of what we do is we don't want to use poisons when we're doing our work. That's the hand cleaning. We prefer to not use anything except plastic crystal brushes and water. Natural hydraulic lime that we use, it's the same as your antacid calcium pill. Like, it's absolutely benign. You can eat it. The lead lettering, well, the lead's not ideal, but it's in our environment. So yeah, we try to care about the environment and keep our eyes open for cool things. So I'm happy to answer questions.
So what proportion of Sandgate have you surveyed?
So we have now surveyed all of Sandgate, and I had this dream that when I got COVID, I was going to catch up on all of my COVID paperwork. I managed to not catch COVID for a very long time, so I never had that 2 weeks of isolation that I wanted to do. However, I had a cold last week, and I did manage. Sandgate data is actually the last thing that I have to do, and I had 990 entries. I'm down to 80. So as of next weekend, I will actually, all the Sandgate will be done. And tomorrow they're actually going to go and check out some of the gaps. Sometimes we've missed something, or we haven't been at the moment yet. So we'll be working on that. And we actually have City of Newcastle Cemeteries Officer and Lake Macquarie coming out tomorrow to see our program. So we're going to be exploring that with them. So that's really exciting.
And how many have you already installed?
Well, I should have prepared that number.
Well, the fellow I said
Yep.
talking this morning told me he thought it was 60.
So it's well more, it's more like 260.
Oh.
Yeah. So lots of those monuments don't look any different than they did beforehand. About 40 of them have liens that are no longer there. but most of them now just have pins. So across from the office, we actually did 10 monuments there that were unsealed, above head height monuments. We didn't have to lay them down first, but so yeah,
That very first row.
that very first row, yeah.
Which,
Houses.
and
Yeah.
Mary Wilson, their
Yes.
first burial.
Yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, we've done 10 of those. There's still one obelisk in sandstone, otherwise conservation repair.
That's good. Thank you very much for that. Incredible. But I'll ask a broader question. You said earlier in the piece that there was a lot of grant instruments here because of the budget.
Yeah.
Newcastle has been working for start. So I just wondered why you made that statement.
Yeah, I guess there's two parts to it. There are clearly some very wealthy owners, mine owners, and you know, the wealthy few. But actually, if you compared Sandgate, and I mean, we have Sandgate. So the number of monuments that have to be repaired at Sandgate versus Warrenora, Macquarie Park, Eastern Suburbs, Field of Mars, we actually have a very similar number, about 1,500 at each of those. However, at Sandgate, we have 600 Class A monuments, and at most of those other sites, and including Gore Hill, we have 100 to 200. So you're talking about the scale of monuments at Sandgate is significantly higher than any other Sydney cemetery, except for the Catholic and, well, the center of Rookwood. Other than the center of Rookwood, the Rookwood #1 cemetery, Sandgate is the grandest cemetery.
Was that a surprise to me?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, well, it was a surprise to learn how important Maitland was, and Maitland Glebe Cemetery, fascinating cemetery, and the quality of work there is amazing. But here, yeah, so a lot of money was spent on monuments. Partly, so one, there were people who were spending a lot on monuments, and then the counterpoint is when someone dies in an accident in a mine, a lot of people will contribute to that. So those monuments are also grander than they would be. So a poor person, absolutely working class, and yet has a very grand monument because of their story. And I mean, that's the other shocking thing. So is the number of accidental deaths in mines. And you know, it's written in the landscape there. So yeah, amazing.
Oh, thank you so much, Sash. We have thoroughly enjoyed hearing all of that information. Absolutely amazing.
Super.
So many things that you have no idea about unless you're told.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you so much for your time.